Welcome to the next episode of Rise to Prominence. I was fortunate enough to spend some time in Dubai with Darren James, CEO and founder of Definitive Consulting. Although we chat from Dubai, Definitive Consulting actually started 20 years ago in the UK. Darren and his team's success now sees Definitive Consulting in Australia, Asia and the US. Darren talks to me about the positives and the learnings over the years which he has taken from his Definitive Consulting experience, which still remains a global success today. On top of that, 5 years ago, Darren launched 4 Pillars Group, which is an investment firm for recruiters looking to launch their own business. He continues to scale both businesses successfully, so let's hear from Darren about how he manages to scale and juggle multiple global businesses. Darren, thank you very much for joining us on Rise to Prominence here in Dubai, in your lovely home. So thank you very much for having me.
No, thank you for coming, yeah.
I'm glad I've arrived on the hottest week known to man in Dubai and setting records, so it's a good start.
Oh yeah, you're right. I think it's the hottest week in May, isn't it? Yeah, we had over 50 degrees this week.
Yeah, it was a shock coming from a rainy Sydney.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure.
So tell us about yourself. You were obviously sitting here in Dubai, but it didn't start in Dubai, and it didn't start in recruitment either.
No. I'm one of the few people that chose recruitment as a career rather than fell into recruitment as a career. I started in retail many years ago, and if I go right back to the very beginning, I was a Saturday job that me and a friend of mine, we were just walking around trying to find some Saturday work. He'd been told by his dad that he needed to get a job, and I thought I'd go with him, and then we ended up working for a company in Bath, which was a shoe company.
Are you from Bath originally?
I'm from Bath originally, that's my hometown, yeah. And we did that job for a few years, and I really enjoyed it there. And the company turned around to me and said, look, we have this, would you mind training a few people? We've got these management trainees coming in. They're on the graduate intake scheme, and I didn't really know much about the company other than the job that I was doing for a company called Trueform at that time. And I was like, yeah, okay, of course, yeah, I'll show them the ropes and so on and so forth. So I was showing all these management graduate trainees how to do the job and how it worked, and I was taking on more shifts, and then I was working over summers, and I was doing all these things. Anyway, it transpired that Trueform was a part of the Sears Group, which was this huge organisation that I didn't really know anything about at that point in time. As a 14, 15, I was 14 when I started.
Wow.
And they said, "Oh, would you like to be involved with this as well?" And because you're training all our management trainees, and I was like, "Yeah, okay, I'll get involved." And so that's basically where I started, and I started working within the Sears Group, and at the time, the Sears organisation had more branches than the post office. It was only the post. They had 3,500 stores across the UK at that point in time.
Yes, I think a lot of people obviously know Sears or know the name from that time, but I don't think they would. I mean, I don't think we'd have known that fact.
Yeah. Honestly, it was crazy. It was crazy. It was crazy big, the organisation, and so I started on the management scheme. I started running branches, and then I started running, groups of branches and what have you. So yeah, I started out. That's where I started. Yeah. So that sort of transpired into. I moved then into insurance brokerage, as it was at that time. And it was in that role I got promoted a few times, and I was hiring in excess of 300 people a year, and some of the people that were coming through to me, to take the estate agent analogy, I was asking for 2-bedroom flats, and I was getting 1-bedroom bed sits, and I was like, why are they doing this? There's got to be a better way of doing this. So to cut that part of my career, that corporate part of my career, down to that, which I was probably doing a disservice, but I was looking at where do I think I could, make a difference, or where do I think I would be able to create a business that has some value for me personally, but also to our customers. And I thought, recruitment probably going to be it, because I've not had a good experience, and I hadn't had a single good experience. So I set up my first recruitment business. Me, Yellow Pages, telephone, and I hired an assistant to work with me, and we went from scratch. And I had an investor, which will come full circle on at this point. At some point, had an investor. I wanted world domination. They wanted to just take the money out of the business every single month. So that came to a bit of a head quite early on, and I sold my part of the business to them, and then go right back to my Sears day. And the reason I mention that is that I was then taken in. So I had lots of ideas about how a recruitment business could be run and scaled, and what you could do differently. But they were ideas at this point.
Yeah.
And I ended up working for a company called David Chorley International. This is way back in the day, so in 2000. They were buying themselves out of a US-owned business, and it was a bit of a marriage. It was a good marriage. I agreed with them that they would let me do what I wanted to do. And they would leave me to my own devices as long as I was above targets and things like that. They would leave me alone. So that they allowed me to test all my ideas out, and I would help them with the US side of the business, because obviously I'd had dealings with Sears with the US. I understand how they worked and how they negotiated. So the strategy of that business was to buy out the recruitment businesses, because it was owned by an engineering company. Buy all the recruitment, they had different recruitment businesses. Mine was finance. They had IT, they had energy, they had front office banking, trading, and all that sort of stuff. And it was valued at about 20 million at that point. So this was a long time ago, in 2000, and flowed down with the owners and said, yep, 20 million. So we were going through that whole process, and I was working with the leadership team around that. And then September 11th happened in 2001, and the whole ecosystem of recruitment businesses changed dramatically. And my business went from being quite a small part of the business. I was running a region within David Chorley International at that point, and we probably started 2001 as maybe 6 or 7% of the overall business. By the end for mid 2002, we were well over 40% of the business.
So in a couple of years.
Yeah.
Wow.
We'd continue to grow. Those other businesses, were going the other way, and there were lots of reasons behind this, complicated reasons, because it was a listed business. They'd announced the stock market they were going to sell the business, etc., etc., etc. Anyway, I ended up buying my part of the database for £20,000.
Good move.
So we've gone from 20 million to
Good investment.
So I was like, oh, okay, that's
I'll take
that. So David Chorley International became Definitive Consulting in December 2002, just in my part of the business. So I took that part of the business, my team. The rest of the business went off and did their own things, and either folded or they went and did their own things. And we stopped trading on the Friday as David Chorley International. We had to move over the weekend because we couldn't be in the same site, because that was all part of we moved to a different office, set up the business, and started trading on the Mondays.
Did you ever pick up the phone and say the wrong name because it was that quick?
I'm sure it happened. I'm sure it happened. Hence the reason we went with DC, and that was the part of the time, because it was Definitive David Chorley. At that point, it was always DC.
Right. Oh, so that was handy. So you went into recruitment, really. So I think there's people think when the people look at the recruitment industry and look at founders and look at businesses, it's people that have been in recruitment from 18 and know nothing else, predominantly, or a bit of an over exaggeration. you kind of picked an industry with no experience. With obviously you had some experience in seeing how SEAs worked and things like that, and your experience along the way. But going, right, I'm going to go into recruitment, just take what I know and see how we go.
I was a professional manager that had no recruitment experience.
Very unique, I'd say.
Maybe. It's unusual, certainly, even compared to the profiles of people I see now. Would I invest in me? I don't know. That's a good question. But I had an idea, and I knew how to build teams. That was the thing that I was good at doing. I knew how to build businesses. I'd worked in big corporates. I understood the strengths of those types of industries and the downsides of those particular types of businesses. And I felt so I'm self-taught in recruitment. I still am self-taught. I've literally learned everything by going and finding out, trying things, testing things. And we use a iteration even still within Definitive today of my back of an envelope, we should be doing this, and there'll be people in the business who can tell you that we hit a particular problem with something, and it would be me just sitting down and having this like brainstorming thing about let's try this and let's do this, and our whole headhunting concept came from that there's a market opportunity here. Why are all these jobs here and yet nobody's working them? That happened in 2004. We were in the finance business. We were doing the traditional CFOs to bookkeepers and payroll clerks and everything in between.
This was based in London.
This was based in Swindon. Swindon of all places. So I ran basically everything from the M25 across. Right. That was my old area for David Chorley. So we kept that, and we were based in Swindon. So we Bristol, Cheltenham, Gloucester, Reading, Swindon, that whole area there. And all of these newly qualified accountants, because they hadn't recruited after 2003, because obviously because of the 2002-2003 intake was so poor because of what happened in September 11th, they just cancelled it. They had no new qualified auditors. So all these accountancy firms were looking for these newly qualified, and there weren't any. Of course, there were some, but there weren't many, and they weren't looking for jobs because they were being promised this and so on and so forth. So I'd never done search, never done anything like that. It'd all been traditional, approach to it. So we sat down, we thought, okay, well, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do this with this volume? Literally back of an envelope. Okay, we'll do this, and we built this system, and we used some of the traditional search techniques, I suppose, if you look at it now. But we sort of completely fine-tuned it and did, put this different mechanism into place, which now the vast majority of recruitment businesses did. But between say 2004 and maybe 2008, we were literally the only business doing it. And we went on a massive growth spurt between that point and say 2008.
So 7 years.
Yeah, we just all of a sudden the business became a completely different business because we were working in a sector which was high demand, low supply.
Yeah.
And we were able to find people. And we weren't competing in, and it was that was a light bulb moment for me. I was like, okay, right. This is where we should really be focusing. And then I got dragged back into London. I've been in and out of London many times in my sort of professional career, and it's probably the third time, and then that's when London came back in 2007. So in 2007 we opened in London, and then we added legal at that point because we were doing a lot within the business transformation space within the accountancy firms, and a large part of that is legal.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, could you do this? Can you help with this? And then we started getting into that.
And it created a niche.
That created a niche in that, So we launched the legal business, and the people, some of the people who launched the legal business still with the firm at the moment. What was that? Nearly 20 years later.
And that was 2007, so
2007, yeah.
not the best time to start.
No, but neither was 2002.
Well, it seems to be like
there's a pattern.
There's a pattern.
I do think that, and I say this to people when I speak to them now, the market's quite tough in certain parts of the world. You'll know if you have a good product and your service offering is good if you can make it work in this market.
Yeah.
Because if your USP, and that's a very overutilized term, but if your market definition, where you're going, what you're doing it for, resonates with your customer base, it will resonate with your customer base now, and then you're in a far better position to take advantage of when the market goes up. I think that a lot of the businesses that struggle set up when it's really good and it's basically shooting fish in a barrel, and then all of a sudden when it tightens up they realise that they don't have very good relationships with people, that they don't have clients, they just have people, or customers, they just have people who use them when they've got no choice but to use them, and that sort of thing. So sometimes that timing in 2007 was okay, we didn't know, and then obviously it was only at the end of that. And then that whole GFC, financial crisis, whatever term you want to use for it, and depending on where you are in the world, that gave us a chance to change our model again. So we went through a period of time, because we built out this business, but we were doing, in effect, executive search, but for low level. So we had a massive infrastructure needed to. So, for example, in 2006, we did 140 placements within just one particular area of accounting and finance. And that was a team of 3 people doing that. Yeah. It was a machine. This thing was an absolute machine. Yeah. And we were doing the same amount of work for an £8,000 placement of those days as we were for an £80,000 placement. Oh, this is all wrong. We need to. But you can't let go of that, because the clients won't let you let go of that.
There was still a need.
Still a need, and whilst you want to go and do that work, and this is one of the things that I think happens a lot with businesses, and a mistake that businesses make as an aside, they try and do everything. And you get known for what you do the most of, and most businesses are pyramids. So if you want to do executive search, you have to do executive search. You can't do anything else, because you're always going to do more of the everything else, and that's what you're going to get known for. And that's what basically happened to us. We were in this transition period where we wanted to do more senior work, but they still wanted us to do the more junior work. And it was constant negotiation with them. Yes, you can do this, and then obviously fees are lower there. And
you're not really seen as a generalist when you set up as a specialist.
And we were a specialist in a sector, but we were generalists because of the depth that we were working. And it was starting to create issues with conflicts and things like that, because obviously, you can't. People were putting into contracts, quite rightly so, that you can't headhunt from the firm and be a supplier to the firm, quite rightly so. And I completely get that. But it would cause us a problem, because people were putting us onto PSLs, deliberately putting us onto PSLs to stop us taking people from, not giving us any work really. Or going, oh yeah, you'll get work, it's coming, don't worry. But we found, exactly. So, whilst I think for a lot of businesses it was really hard, and it was really, really hard for us, 2008, 2009 were very painful years. We did 2 things as a business in that period of time, which probably enabled what's happened subsequently. The first one we did was say, right, we're dropping. That market's gone. That middle market was completely gone. Where they really needed help was the terms rainmakers within the legal sector. It's the people who can generate revenue. So we got rid of our non-practice business, so our C&I commercial business, that went. We then basically stuck with the legal business into private practice, and then the private practice advisory, so we call it the ATA business, assurance, tax and advisory business at that point. Management consulting, still a relatively new thing. And we went partner only.
Right, okay.
So we did that on one side, and then the next thing we had was, okay, well, we're in this downturn. We had 42 people at that point within the business. And we had taken a lot of people through graduate intake schemes. We'd identified talented people, and then the work wasn't there. So I had a choice as the CEO, which was I get rid of people and we just thin it down, or we all take a hit for a period of time, and when the market recovers, we will basically then make good what people took the hit on. Which was a little bit left field at that point in time, but I just thought we've got some. We've not given them a chance yet. We've hired them, we've brought them in, and I said the only fair way to do this. I sat down with all the leaders. I said the only fair way to do this is do a vote on it, and we'll go with the majority. And at that point, we had about 40 people. By the time we got around to doing the vote. 38 people voted to take the pay cut, and 2 people voted to get rid of people. So obviously we went with the 38 and everybody did it, and the 2 people who didn't obviously stuck out a bit like a sore thumb. And I think it probably showed a couple of the sort of gaps that were opening up in the business, because we had a London business, a regional business, and it was in the regional business that was there. So anyway, choice was made. That's what we did. They ended up exiting the business, and they went on and set their own little business up, I think, in the end, which I believe did quite well for a while. Fine, no problem with that. And then the business went search only, senior work, predominantly London with the Southwest for a while, and then we ended up just moving everything into London because we were only doing senior work by that point. We could do the regional stuff from London. And a number of the people that we would have had to have got rid of back in 2009, this would have been, are still with the business, and some of our top performers now within the business. So incredible. It's went full circle there. And as I said, we made the right decision, I think, as a business, and I think there are always pivotal moments in business, and I think that was probably that vote in 2009 was probably the single most pivotal moment. The decisions we made when it was that hard and that tough,
a defining moment.
It is the defining moment, and that's what enabled us then to take the international expansion and move on, and our retention of the people that were around the business at that point has been really good. You've met a few of those people, and you've spoken to a few of those people, so that was where Definitive was created, really. The business that it was in 2002 bear no resemblance to the business it was in 2010.
And with 8 years, I mean, if that ratio of votes, if I was a betting man, I would have said it would have been very different to what I thought the outcome with what you were going to see there. So that's really interesting.
And I think that's a cultural thing, as much as anything else. I'd always try to take people on the journey as much as you possibly can, as a CEO, and try and communicate to people why we were doing what we were doing. And there's a lot of good books around this, and good reading that people can do around these things, the £1 million mistakes or the $1 million mistakes and all those sorts of things. There were a few that obviously you make as you go through it. Oh, what did I do that? And there are a few that you go, I can pinpoint certain things, and that was certainly one of them. And not everybody goes on that journey. That's not right for everybody. And when you're evolving and growing at the speed that we were, certainly between 2010 to maybe 2013, because the market bounced back, nobody had done anything for the best part of 2.5 years. And then we had a strong team, we were well positioned, we were probably more resourced than a lot of other people because they had gone the other way and cut people.
Yes, you had people prime ready to go.
We did, and that put us in a really strong position. And that's when we started looking at the international expansion. And 2011 is when we started looking at Australia, and we launched in 2012.
So, I mean, Australia has always been quite a natural progression from the UK, and obviously back then it was the same, and so that was the first logical step for you to go there.
It was, but probably not for the reasons that a lot of people would have done it. I'm sure we'll come on to this later on, but at this point I'd controlled every single element of the business. You know, I was in full control of everything. I knew everything that, well, not everything, but I'm sure
99%.
99% of everything that was going on within the business, and that was fine. It was all, I mean, at that point, Swindon to London is an hour and 10 minutes on the train, you know what I mean? So I needed to force myself in some ways to relinquish the day-to-day responsibilities, and Australia's great for that. It's so far away.
You don't have a choice.
You don't have a choice. And because of the time zones, you're either asleep in one place and awake in the other.
You definitely can't do it all.
Yeah. So, and there were other reasons. UK law firms were going into Australia. It was a good point of difference for us in that period of time. So there were some commercial reasons beyond that, but also I think from a business building perspective, it's a low barrier to entry for a Brit at this point, you know, going to Australia. Everybody speaks the language, mostly, and there's a trodden path of people taking, you know, going down that route. So a well-trodden path of people going down that route. So yeah, it made sense, and it was part of the natural growth of where we were going as a business. I had people that I needed to pass that responsibility down to, and you know, if I was going to run a bigger business, then I needed to take less on. So and be more focused in what I was actually doing.
And so that's then when you moved into Sydney.
Yes.
And then at what point then did the 4 pillars mentality business come into play?
It's been a natural evolution from that point. So I've still got the vast majority of the people in the business that I had in 2013. They're all 12 years more experienced. Yeah. My core leadership group hasn't changed that much. They've all got better. They're all more experienced, and from a day-to-day perspective, I'm not needed from a client perspective or a candidate perspective within Definitive. I help mainly internally, training, development, direction, and mainly work as a coach with the leaders now. So I had more time, and you know, our expansion, there were a couple of things that we needed to do globally from an expansion perspective, which we've subsequently done. But also I think the 4 pillars, you play to your strengths, and my strengths are managing leaders and helping leaders develop. And I'm not the person to go knocking on the doors and winning the work particularly. And even back in those, you know, if you speak to the people who've been around in Definitive since the early days of the business, I've got people from sort of 2003 to 2007. I still wanted them to do that. I didn't really want to do that. That's not really my forte. I can do it, and I enjoy doing it, and I can build. And I was, I had many years where I built a lot of money, but it's not my strength. My strength is really the strategy, the development of the people, and I always enjoy that more than everything else. So I would rather than doing it myself and being, hey, I'm a £2 million a year biller. I'd rather coach somebody and work with somebody to get them up to being a £2 million a year biller. Because if I can have 5 or 6 of those, then I have a far better business than I do if I'm just doing it.
Yeah, that's true.
And that was always my logic. So I felt there was an opportunity to do that, and to work with people that were experienced in their markets and experienced within their sectors that maybe didn't have the experience that I had. And by this point, I'd already set up international businesses, gone through 3 iterations of Definitive by that point. And had a lot of those experiences. Already had best part of 20 years management experience on top of then of doing the recruitment side of it. But I also felt that we'd built a really strong search business. I've been approached a few times by private equity firms and other businesses to bring Definitive into their businesses. And the conversation would always go, we want you, we want your team, we want your platform, but we'll only value it at this much. And the reason we only value it this much because if you leave,
Yes.
well, they're going to leave, they're going to leave, and they're going to leave, and then
the redundancy cost behind it.
But also, what do we actually have? Because it's a very IP-driven business line. So they want it as part of they wanted it as part of their portfolio, but they didn't want it to be the only thing in their portfolio because they would. And I learned a lot about risk within recruitment businesses at that point. So everything that I just sort of moved away from, private equity firms were interested in because they thought, oh no, that's easily repeatable and it's easy to build up and scale.
Yeah.
So I took my learn from that and I thought, okay, well, I don't have to do that from somebody else. I could do that myself. I could invest in businesses, work with them, help them scale the business up, and then we can create our own portfolio.
Especially from your strength of experiences, like you said, it's what you enjoyed doing predominantly, it's what you felt you were good at doing from the successes from Definitive. So it's like a natural next step that would most likely, hopefully, turn out well from your experiences at Definitive.
Sure, there's never any guarantee with these things, but I felt it played to my strengths, and it would also then help create an environment where everybody would benefit, because the people within Definitive would benefit because we'd have temps businesses, we'd have businesses where you didn't need to have 10 years experience to come in. The entry level was sort of 10 years experience and know-how, you could come in and you could learn on the job and so on and so forth. And then those businesses would benefit from having an international brand and presence, and a business that would add from the search perspective as well, from a sale and exit strategy. So there were a lot of mutually beneficial elements to it that I felt we could capitalize on within the business. And my strategy at that time was to take a minority stake, which was very different to what all the other businesses that were in the market were doing at that point, because I didn't want to run the business. And I felt that if you take a majority stake in something, in effect you are running the business, and you can dress it up whatever way you want to, but you are running the business. You might pay somebody to run the business, but you in effect are running the business. And the entrepreneur in me wouldn't have accepted that. And if I wouldn't have accepted it, why would I expect anybody else to accept it? So my view was always to take a minority stake where possible. It's not always possible, but where possible. To say, look, no, you are leading the business. My job is to help you to grow that business, because if you achieve what you want to achieve with that business, then we all benefit.
Mutually beneficial partnership.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that was the idea behind the 4 pillars, and that had been sort of brewing in my head probably when I first started meeting recruiters in Australia, because it was a completely different market. This isn't London. And it's a different market, a different approach to it. And whereas London had its very clear tiers, and you don't do this, you do this, and you are this. And in Sydney, because it is, there's no getting away from the Australian market, it's smaller. And we saw the same thing in Singapore. They wanted more all-round, people that could support them in different ways, and whereas in London, no, you did partner recruitment, and that's what you did, and
very defined.
There's three of you that do that, and then we have an army of people. No, they wanted somebody. They didn't want different people calling them. It was a completely different experience. So it started to sort of whir in my head around sort of 2013, I would imagine.
Okay, and it's been going 4 years, going into its 5th year now.
Yeah. So I had my hands full with building out Definitive at that point, and it was only really around about 2019, 2020. I thought, this would be a good time to do it now. I've got the team are experienced. I've got ourselves in the right position. I had good people in leadership roles in Definitive, because that had always been the challenge for me. And then obviously there was COVID happened. And whereas obviously I'd been able to freely move around the world for whenever I wanted to, that I wasn't allowed to do that anymore. So it became really difficult.
When did you move to Dubai then?
2015. I've been in 10 years.
2015. So a couple of years before that, you thought about the 4 pillars model.
Sure.
You were still obviously very much in the forefront of Definitive, growing that, the operational and scaling that.
Yeah.
And then you moved to Dubai, and then working with, I guess, time zone wise, that works really well with the London Definitive Consulting. And then as and when you did set up 4 pillars, that works pretty well today.
Sure, yeah. So when I was in Singapore before I based myself in Singapore because it was an overnight flight to Australia if I needed to go to Australia.
Yeah.
It was one flight to get to the UK. But I was still in Singapore, ended up on the tools a bit more, so I was working some big projects in Singapore. Some of those were with the US firms. And I wasn't really doing that much with the US firms at that point, other than when they were in the areas that we were, so London, Singapore, Australia, Hong Kong, wherever it may be. And it's a 12-hour time zone difference, fixed pretty much the whole year round if you're dealing with anybody on the East Coast. And I was having to make phone calls at about 2 o'clock in the morning because I was brokering a few mergers at that point. So these were need to make phone calls, and I just thought to myself, I just can't be doing this.
Yeah, that's how long can you manage to do that for?
Yeah, this is, and if we're going to go down that road, and it was always a strategy that the US would be the last piece in the Definitive jigsaw. It's the biggest legal market in the world. It's the most difficult to penetrate. There are loads of examples of people going over there and rocking up and going, we're a UK recruiter, work with us, and then being shut within the space of 3-6 months.
I actually made a joke on the on this podcast to somebody else, and it was something actually I heard, and just sort of didn't make it up. It's where recruiters go to die.
Yeah.
It's because it's tough, and I think
sure.
whether it's the not glamour of Hollywood, but glamour of America, the bigger fees, people go in like wide-eyed. And then obviously the reality hits, and it's like, oh, it's not what I thought, and it's a harder market to penetrate.
It's more complicated than any other market, and the people get remunerated completely differently. And I'd always wanted to go into the US, but I was always conscious of the fact that we probably needed somebody on the ground who was definitive, and then people who were locally. And I couldn't find the right people locally. And also, at that point, it would have had to have been me at that point, and that wasn't really an option for me. Yeah. And it's taken all of that time to be able to, but it's always been a commitment, and we have got there now. We have an office on Fifth Avenue, and we'll continue to build that team out, and it's made a massive difference to the rest of the business. So, the time zones just didn't work, and I thought to myself, no, I've got to be somewhere better. My wife also wanted to move closer for family reasons, so we started, and I was pretty anti-Dubai, to be the idea. I'd never been before, so I'd had the I suppose the press or written iteration of Dubai in my head, and it was repressive, and it was this, and it was that, and so on and so forth, and it was like Las Vegas, the other people saying, so we had all of these extreme, I just thought, well, there's only one way to find out, and that's to go. And
a decade later.
Well, a decade later, I'm still here.
It can't be that bad.
No, and it's changed.
I mean,
dramatically.
To your point, on your views of not never being here before, and then seeing kind of obviously the rise of social media now.
Sure.
It's glamorized this, that, and the other, and so it's a different view I think you're bombarded with. And I've been out here a few times, and I came out here about 8 years ago, I think the first time I came out, and yes, it's still as hot as it ever was, and the buildings are still as big as ever, but you can see the changes for sure. And it's, I think, location wise, obviously it's got its pros, it's got its cons like everywhere else in the world, but I think when people like yourself and they're looking to go to do that global expansion, those 2 o'clock phone calls, 4 o'clock in the morning, it's too hard, and people go, right, ignoring the tax pros and cons of every other country, it's like, actually, to manage America and London, Australia, where are those middle zones that work really well? And Dubai and Singapore do pop up quite a lot.
Yeah, and Singapore worked for me for Asia, and certainly, and I mean, even with London, 8 hours in in the winter is manageable. You can do that, no problem. But the US was a real issue, and the question I get quite often is why are you not in Australia? The vast majority of your business. Every time I go to Australia, I'm working till 11, 12 o'clock every single night, and you can do that for a week, but you can't do that as a life strategy.
No.
And you're constant, and you miss emails because they're coming in. When I wake up, when I've actually managed to get some sleep in Australia, 70, 80 emails. And
you're already behind.
Yeah, and I'm like, I'm never going to read all those.
No.
I just not. I'll read them very quickly, and I'm half asleep. And so, logistically for me, the being here and the way this has transpired over the last sort of 10 years, I can get everywhere in one flight. There's nowhere I can't get to in one flight that I need to get to. And that's a big thing, because when I was going London to Australia, that was
it's a long flight. It's a long flight.
And this is sitting in airports. So I can get everywhere in one flight. I can get back for weekends. I have a young family, so that's quite important for me as well. I can fly on a overnight. Let's say I'm doing Australia. I can fly on a Sunday and get there Monday morning, and I can be back here on Friday afternoon. Worst case, early Saturday morning.
Yeah, it's a manageable commute.
Yeah.
If you have to do it. Yeah.
Which is what I do. It'd be very rare that I would go anywhere for more than a week.
Yeah.
If I'm in London, I'm there 2 days. So.
Yeah, and like you said, from Dubai, ignoring the sitting in the airport, it's a relatively quick flight.
And the one thing that and if people who live in Dubai, and I'm sure you know other people too, it's a very efficient system. I'm the worst person to go to an airport with. I know the quick way through every single airport now, and international. I wouldn't leave if we were going on a flight tomorrow. I would not leave before. I wouldn't leave here, and this is half an hour from the airport. I wouldn't leave until 2 hours maximum before the flight. That would be the maximum I would.
Really? Yeah. That would stress me out a little bit because I'm still learning those quick exits.
Right. I've because I fly so much, I get a fast track through here and get through there, and it's so quick. And
then you're on and you're off.
Sure. And because I with the frequent flyer things and all those sorts of things, cool. They'll pick my bags up from here.
That makes life a lot quicker and easier.
And I have a boarding pass. So I've got it down to a fine art. And when I have to then queue up and do all those things when I'm coming from another airport, I'm like, oh god, this is going to be stressful. I've got to get in the plane in 10 minutes time.
But that's what you need to be doing when you're managing global businesses' time zones. Final question you always ask people is, who do you listen to? Who have you been inspired by? That doesn't need to be anyone particularly famous, that you would suggest that would be a good kind of candidate guest for Rise to Prominence.
Oh, that's a good question. Well, it won't surprise you. I don't really speak to that many people in the recruitment industry.
Doesn't need to be recruitment. Yeah. So
I've got some people I know here, for example. Dubai is a really interesting place. It's completely separate, but Dubai is really interesting because there are a lot of people who come here and have built really successful businesses and either exiting or have exited businesses or grown their businesses and took those risks. And there's a couple of people that I know. One was in the oil and gas industry, one's in wealth management, who have built really successful businesses that completely different path to the one that I'm on. But inspiring stories nonetheless, because they had an idea and a concept and took it and rolled with all the punches that came with that, and now at the other side. So there's a couple of people here that I think would be really interesting.
I'll get your names off. I'll get those names off.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, really appreciate your time today. It's been an incredible story. So thank you very much.
No, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks.